They will regulate a militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. You can find me on Twitter at Cam Edwards. And you can also find me at bearingarms.com each and every day. So we're going to do things a little bit differently on the program today. I was online last night, and I was watching the news rolling in from across the state of Virginia, where county after county, seems like every county that held a county supervisors meeting Tuesday evening, ended up talking about Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. There were a couple of counties that passed Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions, including Lee County, which is the farthest west county in Virginia, the westernmost county in Virginia. It's actually farther west than the Detroit, Michigan area. They approved a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution last night, as did Pittsylvania County. Franklin County discussed, but did not take a vote yet. Amherst County brought it up for discussion, but they did not take a vote. And there were hundreds of attendees at every one of these county meetings. Wythe County is considering a similar measure. Buckingham County is considering a similar measure. I also have heard, but I'm not confirmed, that Dickinson County, Virginia, has approved its Second Amendment sanctuary resolution. I mean, this thing's spreading like wildfire. And in my 15 years of covering Second Amendment issues on a daily basis, I really can't remember anything like this, because that's just one state. That's Virginia. But in the state of Texas yesterday, we saw two more counties become Second Amendment sanctuaries, including Montgomery County, just north of Houston, population of 500,000. You got the Woodlands located there in Montgomery County. Conroe, Texas is there. This is not just happening in rural areas. This is a movement that is rapidly spreading through word of mouth and really local level grassroots support and online networking. It's really fascinating to see. So I wanted to really delve deeply into the Second Amendment sanctuary issue, where it started, what's going on now, where we go from here. And in order to do that, I've got several guests today, starting with Supervisor Ronald Scearce in Pittsylvania County, Virginia, where last night he and his colleagues unanimously approved a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution. We talked with a supervisor this morning, just hours after that vote was taken. And here's what he had to say. So tell me about the meeting. Normally, I used to cover city council meetings back in Oklahoma City. I've been to my fair share of county supervisors meetings, school board meetings. And, normally, I got to say, maybe it's just a sign of how busy we are. Maybe it's a sign that most people tend not to care about things until they're directly impacted. But, a lot of times these meetings are kind of sleepy affairs. They're sparsely attended. Was that the case in Pennsylvania County last night?
No, last night we had a great participation. The citizens, the Second Amendment rights people showed up in force. As probably I would say between 150 to 200 people. The courtroom was full, and there was a lot of great people there showing the support for what we were doing with the passing the sanctuary county resolution.
So what made you decide that this was something that you wanted to pursue? I know when you and I talked yesterday, you said that you'd actually wanted to do this before now, but with Republicans in control of the General Assembly, the thought was, well, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Was it just now that the time is right with these anti-gun laws or anti-gun bills already being drafted?
Well, that certainly made it a priority, but again, I could see the writing on the wall earlier this year, and just with a special session that the governor threw out there, where every anti-gun law he proposed, even he admitted would not have done anything for the Virginia Beach massacre. And I have no problems with common sense laws, but that never comes into play when you're dealing with the Democrats. Right now, they have pre-filed bills, and the gambit is anywhere from one purchase of a weapon per month, going back to that kind of standard. And they're talking about they're not even going to grandfather the confiscation of AR-15s and 30-round magazines. They're just going to, if you don't turn them in, you're going to be a felon overnight. So, it's scary stuff that they're proposing. So I think everyone's going to have to stand up now. I think, it's pretty bad if you look at it for for the citizens of Virginia, and we got to wake people up. I don't know. I can't understand how they allowed this to happen in the first place. I wish people had really gotten out there and voted. If you look at the statistics on the voting percentages, we got to a lower percentage. I think the state average was 40% of the registered voters voted overall, but as the stats got lower into the 30s and down to even in the 20s, usually a Democrat won that locality or that district. So we've really got to get people motivated to get out and vote. It shows it's so important with this last election how important it is that we get out and vote.
Absolutely. Because, you're right. I mean, it's fantastic that you saw 150, 200 people there in Pittsylvania County last night. I think Franklin County had about 300 people show up there. Amherst County had several hundred at their meeting, and votes weren't even cast there. So I think that we are waking up. But make no mistake. I mean, these Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions and what comes next, this is largely a defensive measure. And it's much better when you've got the numbers in the legislature to block these types of bills, rather than having to go on a county by county basis to show your opposition. So tell me, if you can, about the preparation that the county went through in terms of looking at other resolutions, talking with attorneys. What type of diligence did y'all do before you passed this resolution?
Well, for me, when I was thinking about pushing this earlier in the year, I gone out and gotten copies of resolutions, I think from Arizona and some others, and submitted those to our county attorney and asked them to kind of reword it for the county. And we had that, on file. But when Carroll County here in Virginia passed theirs, I called up Philip Van Cleve. He's the president of the Virginia Citizens Defense League, and asked him if he could pass on a copy of that resolution. And after he did that, I submitted that to our county attorney and allowed him to pretty much just go in. And I think he did add a couple of things for legal issues to give it a little more impact. But I think everyone on the board that reviewed it was happy with all the rewording, and I was really happy with the full support of the board. I mean, everyone there is, this whole thing, with the General Assembly. I think we're all very concerned, and we had to do something. I know a lot of people out there are saying that this is just it has no power. It has nothing we can do at our level at this point. But I think that we had to send this message back to the General Assembly, and I also think it'll give our sheriff, Sheriff Mike Taylor, the ability, if he wants to stand down on these kind of unconstitutional laws they're trying to pass. I think it'll give him some standing. I don't know. It's ultimately up to him whether or not he's going to try to enforce these kind of laws, but I know he's as afraid as I am about sending our deputies out to try to enforce some of the confiscation laws. It's going to put a lot of people in danger, and I don't think the people in the General Assembly are considering that at this point.
I suspect that you're right, and I know that I've heard folks say, well, Virginia is a Dillon law state. Meaning that, local governments only have powers that are granted to them by the state. At the same time, when we talk about whether or not or how symbolic this measure is versus how much teeth it might have, I mean, your resolution states that no county funds should be spent to enforce unconstitutional laws. And we know that law enforcement all around the country has discretion about what laws they want to enforce. I mean, there's no shortage of prosecutors and police chiefs in cities around the country that have said we're not going to arrest anybody or prosecute people for low levels of drug possession. You got the new district attorney in San Francisco who says they're not going to prosecute public urination cases, prostitution cases, and a number of other crimes. And again, nobody on the left is out there saying, well, you got to enforce every law on the books. Law enforcement does have discretion, and so I think it's going to be a real interesting a challenge going forward as to whether or not the state of Virginia is going to continue to allow county sheriffs and local law enforcement the discretion that they have enjoyed up to this point.
Mm-hmm. Well, the scary thing is there is some legislation being put forth by the governor that will allow the localities to make up their own gun laws.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll take us away from the Dillons Rule. And to me, that's our county Commonwealth attorney was at our meeting last night and discussed this. I mean, it's going to be crazy if you're driving from our county to, say, Charlottesville or going up to Fairfax. I mean, you're going to have to worry about new gun laws that these localities institute. It's going to be a nightmare trying to just drive through your own state. So I'm telling you, the crazy stuff the Democrats are going to pull on us really has all of us concerned down here in Southside Virginia.
Absolutely. Well, I know that this fight is just getting started. We're still weeks away from the legislative session. One last question for you, Supervisor. I know you said you reached out to Philip Van Cleve of the VCDL back when Carroll County passed their resolution. Have you been in contact with other supervisors around the state? I mean, it seems to me that one of the things that we're watching here could be the foundation of a new network of grassroots activists and county supervisors that they really haven't been talking together a great deal in the past, but now you got the opportunity to work together, maybe coordinate on things. Has that started happening as far as you know?
Well, I've coordinated with our Danville, the city of Danville, some of the councilmen there. I'm hoping that they might consider this, but the city of Danville has a little bit different makeup than the county.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a great idea. I can tell you one thing. I think we're going to have to start knocking on doors. A few years back, the NRA sent a field representative to our county and helped us win back our 5th district congressional seat. And it was really important. We had a list of NRA members, and we specifically knocked on those doors, and I think it helped swing our district back to a conservative district. So I hope the NRA is just as involved as everyone. I'd love to see them send another field representative like that. I think it's so important. I just won re-election by 70%, and I think it was so important that I got out there and I knocked on specific doors, leaning Republicans, weak or hard Republican voters, and I focused on those voters. And I think that's an important thing. We need to get out and find the people who believe in gun rights and make sure they're getting out to vote.
Absolutely. Supervisor Scearce, again, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program. It was a real pleasure talking with you. Congratulations on the unanimous vote, and I hope we're going to have you back again very soon, because I know we're going to keep covering this issue and this story in Virginia.
Okay, Cam, I appreciate you reaching out to me. I really appreciate I do track Bearing Arms, and I don't get to watch your podcast as often as I'd like. I'm fairly busy with the supervising job, but like I said, I appreciate everything you do from your end as well, sir.
Thank you so much. Well, we'll be talking again very soon. Thanks for your time today. Now, I also wanted to talk with David Campbell, who's a board member in Effingham County, Illinois, which was one of the first states in the nation to pass a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution. Did it more than a year ago, actually more than a year and a half ago now. Since then, there have been dozens of counties across Illinois that have adopted resolutions in support, as well as localities. And what's interesting about Illinois is that it's not, again, stopping with these board of supervisors or with county board members. You're also seeing other county officials get involved in this as well. And as David Campbell told me, that's important because there's strength in numbers. You must be like a proud papa seeing all of these Second Amendment sanctuaries popping up around the country now.
Extremely proud. When Brian, our state's attorney, Brian Kibler, and I first came out with this, we thought it was just going to be, basically Effingham County here in Illinois and maybe a few of the surrounding counties. And out of the 102 now, here just in Illinois, Cam, alone, out of the 102, we have over 70 of our counties that have joined in on the sanctuary resolution, along with some of the municipalities and even a couple of townships. And then from here, it's just exploded all over the whole United States. It's really a good thing to see.
I mean, it really has, and it's interesting to me, David, because they're almost two forms of or two reasons, why we're seeing these Second Amendment sanctuaries pop up. Either in states like Texas, where right now there's no immediate threat. We've got 13 counties that have passed resolutions, basically, just as a preemptive move. And then in states like Virginia, where I live, after anti-gun lawmakers took over the legislature. We saw this in New Mexico as well. You're seeing this as a defensive move, right? It's not a proactive measure; it's a reactive measure to try to stave off some of these abuses that we've seen around the country. And I can tell you, in Virginia, I mean, just in the past week, since the election 2 weeks ago. We now have 6 Second Amendment sanctuary counties, and David, I can't even keep up with the news reports. There were, I believe, 3 other supervisors meetings last night where votes were not taken, but there were hundreds of individuals at these county supervisors meetings showing up in support of these resolutions. And so one of the things I wanted to ask you, since you're kind of an old hand at this, and your resolution's been in place for a while, what advice do you have for counties that are considering these resolutions? What do they need to keep in mind?
Well, there's definitely strength in numbers. They need to keep that in mind. Number one, they need to go out and talk to all their representatives. And I know it's different in different states. All ours are county board members here in Illinois, but you have I don't know, what are they called in Virginia?
They're supervisors, county supervisors.
Supervisors?
Yeah.
Okay. And they need to contact their supervisors and let them know where they stand. And there's a lot of groups that have formed out there that are available either through Facebook or some, other social media places that they need to get into those groups, again, strengthen numbers, and talk to all your legislators, any of them. I mean, not just supervisors, all the way up to the governor, and let them know, that we're not going to stand for our Second Amendment rights being taken away from us. I think they're getting a good hard message already. I think, we see a lot of things in the news now. Guys like you and I got to throw a lot of things out to you to just keep it out there, because I think that keeps a lot of the fire lit and keep the movement going.
Well, I see myself as sort of the town crier here on this, because I got to tell you, I mean, in 15 years of covering the Second Amendment on a daily basis, I was thinking about this last night as I was watching the news roll in from Amherst County and Pittsylvania County and Franklin County and Lee County in Virginia. I really can't remember a movement taking off like this, where it is happening at the local level. This is driven by your neighbors, basically, and the people that you work with and teach your kids. That's who's really driving these resolutions at the local level here. And yet it is just catching on like a prairie fire. I mean, I've never seen anything like it.
You're exactly right, Cam. That's how actually a couple of your fellow patriots there in Virginia had contacted me to get a copy of our resolution to get the ball rolling. And I think that, kind of helps when you network like that. And like I said, I just talked to you a couple nights ago, and 4 already that you know of, counties in Virginia has taken this on. So those other counties that want to get going, they need to kind of talk to some of these other county guys, see how they got it going, maybe get some of their petitions that they have, and maybe make some copies of those, and maybe need to tailor it a little bit to their area. But that's the whole key behind it. Just keep it going. It's persistent. And stay ahead of the game, and let these guys know we're not backing down. They think you get kind of lazy and back down, and they think they've got a free ride, and they're going to take our Second Amendment rights away from us. But if we stay in the forefront of this and let people know we're not going away, I think we can beat this whole thing. One other thing I did want to mention real quick, is get law enforcement involved too. There's a big push in our area right now to get our law enforcement guys behind this.
Mm-hmm.
And all the union guys and everything, get those guys behind us so they can let the congressmen know that they support us. They don't want our Second Amendment rights taken away either. I think that's such a key point, and it's one of the things that you all have done in Effingham County that I wanted to ask about, because not only did the county board members there, yourself and your colleagues, approve this resolution, but you did have the support of the county attorney and the local sheriff. And you talk about strength in numbers. So it's not just, talking to your supervisors, but it is talking to your county sheriff. It is talking to your, in Virginia, it's the Commonwealth's attorney. And I think, again, when you've got those voices of authority that are chiming in support, that matters too. It goes a long way. I mean, they were elected officials, and people trusted them to put them into those offices. So we can get those guys behind us in all these counties, which I know a lot of them have. That is a big, big plus. One other thing that we did here locally too was we did, have some grassroots level meetings, and we had one here at what we call our Effingham Performance Center. It holds like 1,500 people, and we just had an informational thing. We thought it was going to be, maybe a few hundred people. It turned out to be over 1,500 showed up at our event. So if you can get some grassroots level people together there, in Virginia and some of these other counties, and throw a little informational session together, I think you're going to be surprised at how many people actually show up at those events because they want to know. They want to know what they can do, and a lot of them just don't know what they can do. But if you can get some good informative sessions like that together, it's going to go a long way.
Absolutely. Now, every one of these resolutions, as you say, is different because it's passed at the county level or the local level, and everybody does their own tweaking. But generally speaking, what do you say when people say, these measures are just symbolic, they don't mean anything, they're just a way for politicians to, bloviate and tell me that they support the segment, but nothing actually happens? Do these resolutions, does your resolution in Effingham County, does it have some teeth to it?
Well, they are symbolic. I mean, there is really, as far as the actual resolution, there isn't a lot of teeth in that. But as you can see, we've had over 70 counties join us, so it's saying a lot. The next step from the resolution would be an ordinance. And, this is kind of what we look at as a warning shot over the bow, this resolution, letting them know that we're awake, we're watching, and if we need to take the next step and do some ordinances that actually are law, that's what we'll do.
Well, and in the meantime, I mean, there is certainly a discretion that is available on the part of law enforcement, whether it be your county attorney or your county sheriff. We know, and I mentioned this with a gentleman from Pittsylvania County that I was speaking with earlier today. We got the district attorney out in San Francisco right now saying that he's not going to prosecute crimes like public urination, prostitution, and other crimes. We've got, jurisdictions that are no longer prosecuting shoplifting or theft when it's, under $100. It seems to me that there's already a great deal of discretion afforded to law enforcement. And so, whether or not they choose to make any of these gun control laws a priority or choose to enforce them, it doesn't necessarily we don't need to see a change in the law in order for that to happen.
No, you're right. And you won't need to. If you're fortunate enough, like in our county, our sheriff and our state's attorney both made public statements saying that they would not prosecute or go after any unconstitutional laws, not only the Second Amendment, but any unconstitutional laws. And we've been very fortunate here locally to have that kind of support. And a lot of the surrounding counties now have come out also and done that. They've had their state's attorney and their sheriff come out and say, we will not prosecute or go after anybody that is legally, following the Second Amendment rules.
Yeah. Well, that is good to hear. Again, I think I know it's been over a year and a half for y'all in Effingham County, but I think generally speaking, the Second Amendment sanctuary movement is still very much in its infancy, and it is growing by leaps and bounds. So I know we'll be talking again. But David Campbell, a board member in Effingham County, Illinois, one of the fathers of the Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. Thank you so much for coming on the program today.
Thank you very much, Cam. It was good to talk to you, and anything we can do to help your listeners, you just let me know, and we will be glad to send any resolutions, anything we need to do, give them any advice that we've done, just let me know. We're there. We're not going anywhere.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much, David. We'll talk again very soon. And finally, we talked with Cibola County, New Mexico Sheriff Tony Mace, who's been a guest on this program many times before. He helped lead the way in New Mexico with the Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. Now, majority of the state, I think there are only maybe 2 or 3 counties that have not adopted Second Amendment sanctuary county resolutions. He says it made a big difference in the last legislative session in New Mexico, where a couple of gun control bills did get through, but a lot of them actually were defeated. The trouble is, some of those bad bills looks like maybe coming back, and so we spoke about what happens next in New Mexico with the fight for the right to keep and bear arms. Y'all in Cibola County, New Mexico, I mean, you were leading the way in the state, and now a majority of the state our Second Amendment sanctuaries. So I'm curious just to get your thoughts, first of all, on your take on the national growth that we're seeing here with these Second Amendment sanctuary communities.
I think it's amazing to see all these counties passing these resolutions, and I was trying to keep up with all of them across the state, and I've been to pretty much all the states west of the Mississippi talking about this with the other sheriff's associations and things. And when I come back home, I'll see another county pop up with it, and just I've been trying to keep track of it, and I've lost track. I mean, it's kind of taken our nation, it's our nation, and I think I'm hoping that all we can hope for is that our elected officials, whether it be on a congressional level or on a state level, will actually look at some of these resolutions and look at what's going on when they're going into their committee hearings and they're voting on this stuff and say, hey, I see what's going on with the nation and the people don't want this, and I think we may be taking the wrong path, we may be going down the wrong road. Let's look at something else, maybe it'll open some eyes to people.
I sure hope so. My eyes were open a little bit yesterday. I saw the news that Montgomery County, Texas, which is just north of Houston, passed their Second Amendment sanctuary resolution. A lot of folks say, this is happening only in rural areas. There are 500,000 people who live in Montgomery County. And that was still, a very, very popular proposition there when board members considered this proposal. But you look too at states like New Mexico, states like Colorado, where gun control laws have already been put in place, and now sheriffs are starting to push back. I know that Sheriff Steve Reams up in Weld County, Colorado, has said that when the state's red flag law goes into effect, he will not be enforcing red flag laws. He said, I'm willing to go to jail if necessary. We're facing a similar situation in Virginia. We've got our lawmakers coming back in early January. We know that they're going to be passing a ton of gun control laws unless they do listen to these voices that are sounding off right now. What is your advice, first of all, and when it comes to New Mexico and things like universal background checks or red flag laws? How do you decide, this is a law that is constitutional, and this is a law that I feel infringes on the rights of the people who live in my community?
Well, Cam, a perfect example is last year we fought with our legislature, and we fought for some of these gun control initiatives that we put against them that were being pushed through the legislature. Out of 8 pieces of anti-gun legislation, only 2 made it out. And the platform is, and the lingo that they were using is, if it saves just one life, it's worth it, right? Well, when are we going to, this is a constitutional right, not a constitutional privilege, right? So, they were really pushing the universal background check to say, this is going to stop crime, this is going to slow crime down, this is going to make people safer in the community. And they didn't listen to the law enforcement professionals, that are out there dealing with this stuff day to day, and they don't take into consideration what we're putting on the table, how it's going to impact crime, which it doesn't. Right now, Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, the heaviest populated metropolitan county in our community, the district attorney there was one of the biggest mouthpieces for this piece of legislation, right? Mm-hmm. Albuquerque is at their highest homicide. After this legislation came into law in July, right? Right now, they have had the highest homicide murder rate in the last than they've had since 2017. It did absolutely nothing to impact crime. It didn't deter the criminals from doing any type of criminal action or anything like that. So we know these particular laws don't work, And what I'm hoping is that with the Second Amendment sanctuary resolution stuff is that really that our lawmakers will look at this stuff and say, okay, we're going down the wrong road. We need to stop looking at the tool, the inanimate object. Let's start focusing more on the criminal element, the mental health issues, the different stuff that are actually affecting our communities and driving our crime rates up. I mean, here in New Mexico, we've got our 30-day session coming up, and traditionally it's budgetary issues, but there's already pre-drafted legislation for the red flag laws. There's already pre-draft, and I think they're going to curtail that with what they're calling domestic terrorism laws. There's a piece of legislation introduced to ban semi-automatic weapon and high-capacity magazines, but absolutely nothing to deal with mental health issues or the revolving door for the repeat offenders that are committing crime after crime after crime after crime. And until we get to those, until we start focusing on those issues, we're not going to get anywhere as a society. And I don't care what community you live in, essentially, or what part of the state you live in, or what part of the nation you live in. Until you start focusing on the criminal element and those individuals that are committing the crimes, we're not going to see our community safer. I mean, you hear time after time after time after time where these violent acts are committed in gun-free zones. We're never going to look at that and say, well, wait a minute. Gun-free zones don't protect anybody. They don't make it any safer. It's kind of like it's just saying, hey, come make me a victim of crime. I'm not armed.
Yeah.
We see time after time after time where a good guy, stops a bad person with a gun. We just seen it in Oklahoma. There's a lot of get away from the emotion and look at the facts, right? And let's get down to the root of the evil and start attacking those issues instead of wasting taxpayer dollars, wasting time on stuff that we know does not work. Listen to the professionals, the people that are out in the field that deal with this stuff day in, day out.
And listen, I think you're absolutely right, Sheriff. And we've also seen you can have all the gun control laws in the world like they have in California, and you can still have a targeted attack at a school. You can still have targeted attacks on individuals' homes. I mean, we've seen, 3 pretty high-profile incidents just in the past week in the state of California with universal background checks, a 10-day waiting period, a quote-unquote assault weapons ban, a ban on magazines over 10 rounds. I mean, again, they've got all of those laws in place, and unfortunately, violent criminals break those laws too. So I think you make an excellent point, and I hope that lawmakers in New Mexico will listen. I plan on making some of these very same points to lawmakers in Virginia that we're not just here saying no. We're actually offering things that work as opposed to ideas that infringe on people's constitutional rights and don't impact violent crime. There's the constitutional argument, but there's also the practical argument as well. And there are things that can be done and frankly, that should be done. And unfortunately, I think it's far too easy for a lot of these lawmakers to offer up what I call soundbite solutions. They sound good in the 8 to 10 seconds that you see it on the local TV, but they don't actually have an impact because, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I mean, as sheriff, it seems to me like a lot of the things that really make a difference on the ground are not even necessarily things that lawmakers in Santa Fe might come up with, but they're tactics and policies that y'all can put in place there in Cibola County.
Well, there's when you look at, so we'll stick to just the gun stuff.
Sure.
Depending on who you ask, there's anywhere between 1,000 and 2,500 laws already on the books dealing with guns, right? So, we don't need to enact new laws. Let's refine the ones that we got. Let's look at using those. Let's look at making them more lawful. Boots on the ground can use them. Our tool chests are built, right? Let's use those tools that are in our tool chest to actually to go after the criminal element. We cannot do the same thing over and over and over and over and expect a different result. Nothing's going to change. And then when we talk about, lawmakers enacting law, and you have people that know absolutely nothing about guns, nothing about how they're going to. They don't even teach They don't even teach the Constitution in law school anymore. They teach constitutional law, right? So people coming out that absolutely trying to enact laws. They know nothing about the firearm. They don't know a whole lot about the Constitution, but yet they're up here trying to enact laws over the private citizens. And it's usually it's affecting the law-abiding citizen, not going after the criminal element, which is the problem. And that's where, and when we start, I think when we start seeing lawmakers look at it that way, you're really going to see people come up with good solutions and get behind some of this stuff. But when it's always a constant, direct attack on the weapon, the Constitution, the Second Amendment, the law-abiding citizen, this is where the Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions come up. It's people are like, no, you're going down the wrong path, and we're going to stand up for our rights, and we're going to protect our rights, and when you do put these resolutions back on the platform of we the people, essentially when you're an elected official, that's who you represent, we the people. What are the people that I represent in my community, in my district, in my state? What do they want? What's important to them? And I think right now, this is one of the most important things that are on people's plate across the nation, no matter where you're at, because we see our Congress that can't even get along. They're up there. I mean, the last couple of years have been nothing but a direct attack on the president. So some people are like, "Whoa, what's coming next? Are we on the brink of a society breakdown?" And the criminals are in today and out tomorrow, and I could be a victim of crime at any time. But yet you want to disarm me? People are just like, "No, I'm going to protect my property. I'm going to protect my family." And when you get out here, in rural parts of the county like New Mexico, for me, for my county, an instance is for me to get to one village within my county. It's 86 miles. So a gun in the hand is better than a cop on the phone, right? When you're facing a criminal trying to steal the car, break into your house, or whatever the case may be. So these individuals that are out in rural parts, or like here, 86 miles one way, right? So they're like, I got to be able to defend myself. You're not going to disarm me. I'm not going to give up my constitutional right, and that's the importance of it.
Absolutely. All right, last question for you, Sheriff. You mentioned that red flag legislation, maybe even a so-called assaultments ban introduced or expected to be discussed during that 30-day session. Do you think we'll see the same reaction from these Second Amendment sanctuary counties that we saw last year in New Mexico? Are you and your fellow sheriffs going to be speaking out against those proposals?
Absolutely. The Sheriff's Association is what I want to say. We're out in front of this already. We've got the drafted resolution on the ban on assault weapons in high capacity. The Sheriff's Association sent a letter back to the representative, said, no, we do not support this. And we will definitely, and the only way this stuff will come up in this session is if the governor calls for it. But we kind of got a feeling she may not. We don't know yet. Mm-hmm. But a little too early for that. But we're kind of out in front of this already as an association. And the most important thing is those citizens that are in New Mexico, we need to get out in front of this, and we need to start contacting our legislators, whether it's the state representative or directly to the governor's office. All those representatives' phone numbers are on the New Mexico state website. Their emails up there, and you see them in your communities because it's an off time. And just really get out and visit with them and say, hey, look, these are my ideas. Don't just come out there and say, I don't like this. Put some solutions out there, really use facts and address it with them and get out in front of this. Because, during the 60-day session, they had the rocket docket, and when it was a circus and we saw things flying through the desks over there, what's going to be even worse on the 30-day session because they have less time. So, as citizens, really get out there and talk to your representatives and your senators and say, hey, look, I don't support this, and let's go down a different path. I mean, with the Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions, that was awesome. It was amazing, and it really pulled the rug out from underneath of them on a lot of stuff, and it really got the grassroots movement of we the people holding their elected officials accountable and saying, hey, look, I'm giving you this resolution so you can take it back to the committee hearings to say, I'm not voting on this because my citizens or my constituents don't support it. Mm-hmm. And it's local people, not outside influence, not paid for special interest groups. It's we the people. And that is really where the strength comes from, when the citizens really take back the power and hold their elected officials accountable. And we have every opportunity to do that. We have every opportunity right now for people to just stand up and protect their constitutional rights, because it's not just about protecting one. When we talk about red flag laws, your first, your second, your fourth, your fifth, they're all on the line with that, and that is really important. So again, it's a direct attack on the citizens across the United States as well as their constitutional rights. And that is the main reason why we as citizens need to stand up against this stuff.
Sheriff Tony Mace in Cibola County, New Mexico. I know we'll be talking again very soon, but thank you for joining me today. Thanks for all that you do, sir. I think that the Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions are really, really great things. I really do. Now, listen, they are largely symbolic, as Sheriff Mace said, but the intent behind them is not. A lot of the language of these resolutions state that county funds will not be spent to enforce unconstitutional gun control laws. That puts, I think, a lot of lawmakers on note that these jurisdictions are willing to challenge these laws if necessary. As we've seen in Weld County, Colorado, Sheriff Steve Reams says he's willing to go to jail rather than enforce a quote-unquote red flag firearms law. I know that we've got sheriffs in Virginia that say, I will not be a part of any confiscation efforts. I'm not gonna do that. My oath of office doesn't allow me to do that. I think a lot of these cases are going to end up in court. But what this movement is doing right now is energizing gun owners around the country, whether in, quote unquote, safe states like Texas or new battleground states like Virginia. And again, the movement, I believe, is not even reaching its full potential yet because a lot of these efforts are taking place at the grassroots level. We're hearing about something that happened in another county. Maybe we're reaching out, but oftentimes we're not. We're just going online, wow, did you see what happened in Amherst last time? Well, I want to do this here. And that's great. Don't get me wrong. That's fantastic. But when we start making those connections, when the supervisors in Pittsylvania County start talking with the supervisors in Amherst County and in Lee County, when they start coordinating a strategy going forward, when gun owners use these new connections to build new grassroots networks that will show up at the state capitol on Gun Owners Lobby Day, that will fill the galleries when gun control bills start getting debated, we really can have an impact when we use our voices as one, and when we find our voices in new ways. I think that, again, I don't want to sugarcoat things. We're in Virginia likely in for a really rough few months. And in states around the country that are hostile to the Second Amendment, get ready. And we still have a 2020 presidential election featuring the most anti-gun crop of candidates ever assembled for a presidential primary. All of those things are true. And even the presence of the Second Amendment sanctuary is not going to prevent every bad bill from becoming a bad law. However, I do think that they are valuable. And I do think that really around the country, we are seeing that we're just getting started. So we're going to keep our eyes on the Second Amendment sanctuary movement. We will be revisiting this topic, I think, on a regular basis. I posted something at Bearing Arms yesterday where I wanted to get your take as well. What do you think about this? Is this just, empty talk from politicians? Are these meaningless, toothless resolutions? Or is there something substantive behind these resolutions in support of the right to keep and bear arms? You can shoot me an email. Let me know your thoughts. cam.edwards@bearingarms.com or again on Twitter @CamEdwards. Don't forget, you can subscribe as well to the podcast at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, townhall.com's podcast page. You can also become a VIP member of Bearing Arms and support our Second Amendment advocacy in journalism each and every day. You can do that at bearingarms.com. Thanks for being a part of the program, for watching, for listening, for spreading the word. We will be back here tomorrow with another edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. We'll see you then.